Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Damien Fanus, and I will be your host for DLP TV this evening. Our topic is part two of Foresee or Foresees: crime, cost of living, corruption, and culture. And it would be remiss of me if I don't say good evening to the rest of the diaspora who is joining us this evening. Next to me is our panelists of esteemed luminaries, professionals, and jurists. So, to my right is Dr. Elvis Wickham, medical practitioner, and
Good evening.
and a continued voice on our program tonight. Next to him is Ensley Grainger, attorney at law and candidate for St. Michael East.
Good evening.
So, our first topic for tonight will be crime, and we want to, for your viewing pleasure, show you a video that will set the tone for our discussion tonight.
Good evening, Barbadians. About 48 hours ago, our country, and indeed our neighbors in the region, were shaken by an uncharacteristic display of senseless and lethal violence that left Barbadians and visitors to our national festival fearful for their personal safety. At the outset, I wish to extend my sympathy to the family of Tarid Rock and best wishes for a speedy healing and recovery to all those injured and otherwise affected on Kadooment Day. I cannot imagine the pain that your families are enduring, especially since none of you expected this end to your Kadooment Day when you awoke Monday morning. An occurrence of such magnitude in any democratically governed country would normally elicit the announcement of concrete plans, ensuring that Barbadians may go about their ordinary business without having to panic or to be anxious. It is even more so when the regional and international community are watching us, as they are aware that we will be hosting our regional cultural festival Carifesta at the end of next week for a period of about 10 days, and that persons coming to our shores will want to know that these matters are being addressed. While we appreciate the moral message delivered by the Prime Minister and indeed the Christian Council, we remain deeply concerned that it is only the Prime Minister and his government who constitute the executive of the country and who are the majority in Parliament. In simple terms, the only persons who can provide resources to the police or to the courts or to the social agencies or to partner with communities and civil society or who can facilitate the passage of legislation is the Prime Minister and his government. What makes Mr. Stewart's failure to provide specific concrete measures more troubling is that he is also the Minister of Defence and National Security. He is therefore doubly charged with taking control of the situation and providing the leadership that Barbadians expect of their Prime Minister. In addition, we've also had the unusual spectacle of 4 different members of the government, 3 members of the cabinet indeed, expressing their views and their desires. Views and desires do not constitute a strategy, nor does elegance of language substitute for clear, defined initiatives or resources being provided to the relevant institutions. What they all lacked, the Prime Minister and his ministers, was the consistency and the priority to be given for the necessary actions required to give Barbadians comfort. In other words, what is the legislation that you will bring rather than have an Attorney General mull over the situation and the options? What are the resources to be provided to a beleaguered police force? What measures will be put in place to modernize our criminal justice system to ensure that people face the courts in quick order for crimes that are committed? I want to assure the Prime Minister and all Barbadians that the Barbados Labour Party is willing to support the government with the appropriate consultation in any reasonable national security measures to remove guns from our streets and to tackle their entry into our island. In our Covenant of Hope, which we launched last year, we commit on page 26 under the heading of Fiscal Governance that the first claim on public expenditure in our government must be those resources always necessary to keep our citizens safe. We therefore understand the importance of a non-partisan approach to matters of national concern, just as we recognize that multifaceted solutions are required to tackle an issue that is rooted largely in the social conditions in some sections of our community. The time for action is now. We simply cannot afford any other horrific incident. Our parliamentarians are ready to play our part in support of any firm, fair, and effective action to end the senseless violence that has claimed 7 lives from 16 shooting incidents between May 1st and July 31st this year, even before the incident on Monday. If Parliament is to be recalled from its summer recess, as it was in the emergency ensuing after the fire at Glenderry in 2005, we will be actively involved in the consideration of any and all measures placed before the Parliament. My call for concrete action from the Prime Minister is therefore not about politics. Stray bullets do not care if someone is a Dem or a B, if they're rich or poor, if they're old or young. Anyone can become an innocent victim of indiscriminate behavior. Barbadians must be able to go about their ordinary business daily without having the fear of someone attacking or robbing them. That must be our simple but noble objective. It is to Barbadians that we owe this first duty. In addition to our enviable reputation for being a safe place to live and to work, we also have the same reputation as a safe place to visit. These incidents can potentially destroy that reputation and, in fact, impact our 2 major earners, tourism and international business. These pay our bills. As for cropover specifically, several people often book for the following cropover after having a great time at the one they attended. We only need confirmation of this from the back page of one of today's publications. If those in attendance this year do not have the calm assurance that the Barbadian authorities can manage the situation, they may not be inclined to return. This will impact everyone, from hoteliers to the women and men involved in the selling from fish cakes to craft. Many are depending on that money that they make for back-to-school purchases. Similarly, there are those involved in water sports or who drive taxis or who depend on car rentals. All are at risk of further losses. So this is why the Prime Minister must give leadership to this entire process. All of us as Barbadians stand to lose if the perception goes abroad that Barbados is no longer a safe place to live or visit. I want to urge those with influence in our communities to persuade our young men and women in particular to end this cycle of violence. Indeed, our entertainers have already done so. There will be no happy endings for anyone involved if it continues to escalate unabated. For no one. So while we support an effective and responsive system of law and order, I want to remind Barbadians that we are also committed to reintroducing as a matter of urgency the training and the mentorship programs that for many years helped our young people negotiate their passage to adulthood. Of course, it is also crucial that our people have access to a livable income and opportunities for economic and social advancement if we are to return to the social stability to which so many generations of Barbadians have contributed and to which we were accustomed. This is our Barbados. It is all of us who must now act decisively to preserve our way of life. May God bless each and every one of you, and may God bless the country which we love. Thank you.
Good evening again for those who are now joining us. What you just witnessed was a video from 2017 of the now Prime Minister, who was then the opposition leader, offering her critiques of the then DLP government in their performance of the crime situation in Barbados. In my opinion, gentlemen, that video has not aged very well, because we've heard buzzwords of like leadership and views and desires and eloquence of words and language. But it appears that there is a question of leadership when it comes to crime right now. And all we seem to get is views and desires and eloquence of language. So do you think that right now we need to get a grip in regards to what we can call the current situation in Barbados? And has this current government lost the plot?
Current government certainly earns a failing grade. In fact, someone should show that video to the Prime Minister, see if she recognizes the person. Someone really should share that video with the Prime Minister, and the very eloquent speech which was used to deliver. I mean, the speaker in the video said it is not about eloquent speech, so someone really needs to share that with the Prime Minister. Thy words condemn thee. That is all I could think of as I was listening to that. I've seen it before, I've heard it before. I looked it up recently as well. Thy words condemn thee. Her own words condemn her regarding how she has failed to manage the crime situation. Quite a few things, interesting points were made by the speaker in that video. Quite a few, important points, like Barbadians have a right. Barbadians should be free to go about their daily business without fear of being a victim of crime. Yet we are told recent research by Criminal Justice Research Department that 37% or so of Barbadians in that survey reported being victims of crime, and at least 90% reported fear regarding their safety and the current crime situation in the country. But the speaker in the video mentioned that Barbadians should not be living in that level of fear. They deserve better, and that fair and effective leadership is required. The speaker in the video also referred to the clear and decisive leadership that is needed. Now, September last year, after a spate of homicides in the space of 1 week, when our leader visited the country, a 26-man committee was set up as one of the first measures.
That is true.
What fruit has it borne? Is that clear and decisive leadership? Absolutely not. There was eloquent speech, though. I remember when that committee was set up. So, thy words condemn thee is all I could think of, and so much more can be said. And at the time that video was, at the time the Prime Minister, the opposition leader at the time made those comments, we had gone through a rough patch. During that 10-year span, we had lost, between 2008, 2018, we lost about 224 persons to homicide during that time span. In the 6 years and 6 months or so from 2019 to now, we have lost 265 persons to homicide. That is about 41 persons per year compared to 22, 23 per year in the 10 years preceding. So someone really needs to show that video to the speaker, see if she recognizes the person.
It's true. Mr. Grainger, has the government lost the plot? What are your views?
The government, in my view, has failed the people of Barbados. And listening to the words of the speaker, one can only describe it as a haunting melody. How her words have come right back, face to face, haunting her as we speak here tonight. And everything that the speaker has said then in 2017 is apt right now in 2025 under the leadership of the speaker. Or how we would love to hear those words from that speaker in 2025 today. You speak about what was mentioned in the speech of our overseas markets and hearing these things. But we recently had the United Kingdom issuing an advisory to its citizens when coming to Barbados, exercise precaution, utmost precaution when coming to Barbados. And the situation here now is more dire, in my estimation, than what exhibited during the 2000 or at 2017 when the speaker was making her comments. Was it politicizing crime then? I don't know. Was it? But the speaker found it politically correct to wherever she was then at the time to condemn the previous government and now face with the reality today that speaker is silent. Buzzwords, cliches will not cut it. Guns don't walk and guns don't talk, not about here. That doesn't cut it. This government, this present government, while in opposition, was the answer to all problems Barbados faced then. But come face to face with reality, this government, along with many other Barbadians, will give this government a failing grade on their handling of the crime situation in this country.
I'm glad that you said two things that caught my attention, comrade. You were talking about the promises that was made, because if you go back and read their manifestos, this current administration, they said that Barbadians have a right to be safe. And moreover, the second thing that caught my attention, what you said, was the UK travel advisory that now Brits must take precaution.
Yeah.
So my question to you, my esteemed panelists, is tourism currently under threat? Are we now facing the reality that our bread and butter is now probably on shaky ground in regards to how Barbadians will now earn and how Barbados will be viewed as a safe destination? Have we gotten to that point?
Yes, we have. And I can say that without fear of contradiction. Tourism, from my vantage point, was already on somewhat shaky ground. I mean, we have placed all of our eggs in the tourism basket, more or less. Tourism clearly has not been paying our bills to the extent that the government might have expected. Or I would imagine if it were doing that, then we wouldn't need to be borrowing almost 1,500 million plus for the year so far. So tourism was already on shaky ground where arrivals weren't translating to spend, which wasn't translated to money that was actually staying in Barbados. Coupled with the fact that Barbados is, by some metrics, by some standards, the most expensive tourist jurisdiction in the world.
True that.
And now on top of that, we are a jurisdiction where the headlines are showing significant violence. British travel advisory from one of our main, if not our main source market, along with USA and Canada. So, when you consider all of those factors, ask yourself, why should a tourist come to Barbados? We are expensive. Government has warned you. We have an unprecedented number of homicides relative to what we are accustomed to having, and it's not just homicides. There are other crimes. Up to this morning or overnight, whenever it happened, I don't even know how you steal an ATM machine. The tourists are seeing this. The internet doesn't hide. The internet does not forget. So when tourists are considering where to travel to, I'm not sure how much more they will continue to consider Barbados. Bearing in mind, as I said, tourism already really was not contributing to the extent that I believe the government anticipated. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to be borrowing so much. So yes, tourism is on extremely shaky ground. We're not a cost-effective, cost-competitive jurisdiction, and now you have the spiraling crime situation.
Right, Comrade Grainger, do you believe that?
Yeah, I would say here that we in the Democratic Labour Party, we take no pride in having to repeat or to mention about the advisory from the British government. The UK has always been and continues to be our primary source market in tourism. And if we lose that, where are we? And I'm calling on the government that they must take decisive action to stem the rising tide of crime. It cannot go on unabated. And I see that there is this reluctance and a tardiness on this government in passing legislation to deal with the source of the problem. And government has to take full blame for what is the circumstances as they are right now. And as I say, we take no pride we take no pride whatsoever in what has just come out from Britain. If the US does it, what happens? We are dead.
All right. So from what I heard from you gentlemen, crime now is, in a sense, we're seeing crimes that you would never thought would have happened to our little Barbadiana. Because right now, I heard this morning that someone tried to snatch an ATM. They didn't try to break into it.
A whole ATM, you
They
know.
tried to take the ATM with them. That is something I've never heard of in my entire life. Now we have carjackings. And honestly, when I was a young man growing up and you watch the action movies with these Schwarzeneggers and these Stallones and stuff like that, you might see a movie where somebody might attempt to carjack someone and the hero comes out and save the day. Now we have carjackings in Barbados. 166 square miles. How is that even possible? So my question to you now, are the criminals becoming more brazen? Because you think that you don't want people to fear the government, but you want those bad actors to fear or have an intrepidation when they go out to hurt someone or to misappropriate something that is there. So has the fear gone? Are these criminals brazen? They see that there's no action, nothing is being done. Has the government, in a sense, become impotent in regards into striking fear into those who would look to commit crimes in Barbados?
It's interesting you should say that, you know, David. I do remember the AG a few weeks back saying the criminals are afraid of the Barbados Labour Party.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure how we're supposed to take him serious.
Yeah.
Right. Look, this is serious, man. This is our Barbados.
True.
We live here. The speaker in the video said we have a right to be able to walk the street without fear of catching a stray bullet.
Yes, she did.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was in Bridgetown a couple days ago. I don't go to Bridgetown too often, in and out less than an hour. And I can tell you, for me, it was an uncomfortable hour in light of the situation that we are experiencing in Barbados, because the criminals clearly seem to have no fear of the system and of consequences. Now, for all of the inadequacies in terms of lack of manpower and equipment and so on, our police do a pretty good job of catching the criminals. Police aren't responsible for a person deciding that they're going to do something criminal. That is the condition of man's heart. Even government per se is not responsible for that. But government certainly has a duty, a moral obligation to keep its citizens safe. And as the survey would have shared recently, you know, citizens in Barbados right now don't feel safe. And we would have mentioned this, government with 28 seats in parliament, excluding the speaker, government with 28 seats can pass whatever laws, can amend whatever laws. Government is the one that is supposed to ensure, you know, the judiciary is up to scratch in terms of whatever the judiciary needs. But where measures can be put in place that can cause criminals to, number one, think twice, or two, if you decide not to think twice about what you are about to do, and the police catch you, as our police do. Our police do an excellent job of catching criminals in a relatively decent time frame. But the issues are what happens thereafter, the delays and the issues in the judicial system, and then, quite frankly, for repeat offenders, what I would consider, as a non-lawyer, inadequate sentencing. These guys have a mentality, a number of them, that I will spend time for you, because they don't fear the time. They're back out in a hurry. And I'm not going to venture too much into the law in the presence of two lawyers, but they clearly don't fear the idea of going to jail and spending time for you. Government has a moral duty and has been failing in that duty to strike fear, I would say, into the hearts of criminals. Because yes, government, by its actions and by how things are done legally, the criminals should have to think a second or a third time before they do what they're about to, because they will know dire consequences will follow.
Agreed. What I would say here is that crime is not just the business of the police. Crime is not just a government thing. Crime is everybody's business, right? But what we are seeing, this is not just about police and the criminal offender. This is about a government that has failed the people. It has failed to take charge of the prevailing circumstances that exist in the country. I will continue, and we in the Democratic Labour Party will continue to salute the men and women of the Barbados Police Service for the sterling work that they have done over the years and continue to do, even in trying times. And one of the things in this situation, they're overworked and they're underpaid. But they continue to press forward to the cause of keeping Barbados safe. And I salute them. But as I said before, this is about a government that has failed the people through its economic policies that tend to look more towards, as Mr. Dennis Kelman usually say, the too few, and not the wider public, especially those at the bottom.
So, something that I also noticed in the video itself, she had called on the then Democratic Labour Party government to implement more youth programs so as to snatch the minds of our youth away from those who might steer them down the wrong path. But as someone who is, well, very, very familiar with current situations as it is, the government ended the Barbados Defense Force Sports Program. And that was to me, that was a youth program that I would shout from high heaven, something that's really needed, because it brought sportsmen into a disciplined environment.
That's right.
Educated them, trained them, gave them a stipend. There were opportunities to see the world and compete in international and regional competitions. I myself cannot say that I've not been impacted from being in there, because I am who I am because of that particular institution. But you end it. But in this video that we watched, you were criticizing the then government to that there was a lack of them. But then when you got the reins, you ended and pretty much augmented a good set of these youth programs. From what I understand now, the youth service, you don't even spend like the overnights over there anymore. You just go and you come back. So I guess as a cost-cutting measure or what's not. What is this government doing when it comes to our youth?
They will have to say whether it was cost cutting. There are reasons for doing it. I will propose to speak for them. But from my vantage point as well, it clearly didn't make sense to end such a program that imparted education, skills, and did so in a disciplined environment. You know, three of the things that are issue now with many of our youth: need for further education, need for physical skills, training, developing sports skills, and also the lack of discipline in the environment that many of them are in. You know, the BDF would have provided a very disciplined environment, because you would have to tell me, I don't imagine you could go there and play the fool.
No, you cannot.
So,
no, you
and we're clearly seeing a lack of discipline among many of our youth, a lack of regard for self and for fellow Barbadians. The ease with which we see criminals tormenting citizens. You mean, you walk into your car, the car park, whether it be a Price Mart or some other location, and you're looking around because you don't know who's coming to pounce on you when you open the door. You know, persons are walking around very fearful, extremely edgy, because of the actions of, by and large, many of our younger persons under age 45. So what opportunities are there in disciplined environment for our youth to develop themselves further in a more positive way? Government would have to answer. As I said before, someone really should show that video to the speaker.
What I can say to you, Comrade Damien, is that in speaking to our leader, that defense force Barbados Defense Force Sports program is very, very dear to him. And I can assure you that a Democratic Labour Party government, that program will be instituted. That program will be instituted. But something I wanna say here, I remember the Prime Minister, or I do recall the Prime Minister at the launch of the Prime Minister's Cup football. Then the Prime Minister is actually saying to the players, any guns, no football. It says to me that the people that she was speaking to are the persons who have the guns. That is just from my observation of what she said. But to look at it seriously, why would you have to be telling your citizens, if you bring guns, you ain't getting no football? That is I don't know. That needs to be really, really analyzed, because it speaks negatively of this government to see that you are presiding over a country where guns are prevalent, to the extent that you have to be telling footballers, if you bring the guns, you're gonna get football done. It is serious. It is serious.
Okay, so we have a comment here from Judy Dotton Gittins. Jokes. My apologies. Judy Dotton jokes. Look what the Barbadian or the foreigner people came to break into an ATM machine to get money. The people want work. Things hard for everyone, panelists, which is a good segue into our next topic, which would be the cost of living. Now, there is research that kind of correlates crime to, in a sense, poverty. But we're going to segue into what we will call the cost of living, because basically, right now, it is in a sense a hot topic for a kitchen table topic for those individuals right now who feel it the most, the middle class. What are your views on the current cost of living in Barbados?
It's a stranglehold. The middle class officially is now the working poor, unless perhaps one of the consultants working for 12,000+ a month. You're struggling in Barbados at the moment. Bills, fuel costs. We're in summer, so school supplies, children going back to school. I take note of the prices of various things in the supermarket, even things that I may not be purchasing, just to see how prices are moving. And recently, I was taking note of formula prices. I don't have to buy formula like that anymore. My children are older, but one large can of the popular formula, I will not call the name of our supermarket, which used to be $30 odd, now $50 for that large can.
Wow.
Price of everything seemed to have gone up, and person spending power. Remember, we are a very highly taxed jurisdiction. So person spending power has been strangled. Even with the slight increase in minimum wage recently, it is almost a given that slight increase in minimum wage will end up indirectly, unintentionally increasing the cost of living, because businesses will do what businesses tend to do. For a business, my expenses are no higher, so I'm going to pass on that expense. So the very few extra dollars that persons got, who are at the lower end, will not now be able to go any further, really, because the cost of goods and services that they need to access will be higher. So it is a serious problem. The $300 share of the quote unquote bounty, it was gone before you got it. In fact, it went back to the government's hands before you got it. So persons are struggling under the current cost of living, and that is no doubt one of the drivers in the crime situation. And it is something that is hardly, from my vantage point, being addressed by the government of the day. How are you going to give persons more spending power? Quite frankly, the way you do that is by reducing taxes.
Yeah.
But the government, this being a government of borrowing, they're addicted to borrowing. And with tourism not bringing in the receipts and the money not staying in Barbados from tourism that they would expect, you now are forced to meet your debt obligations by taxing. And that then is why persons have, less and less spending power to deal with the current cost of living in Barbados. So the government, because of its borrowing habits, has boxed itself into corner, and the end result is that Barbadians are being squeezed. They have very little to no disposable income.
We must state the facts here tonight. No sugarcoating. The cold, hard fact is that Barbadians' living standard is harder today than it was 7 years ago, especially for those at the bottom of the ladder. And these persons are finding themselves under pressure. And when that pressure builds, then frustration and desperation steps in. And what does that lead to? Part of the troubling crime situation that we are experiencing today. And I will say to this government, whether they want to accept it or not, you cannot fix the crime unless you fix the cost of living. The two are symbiotic. When things are going good, crime is at a low. So this is saying to me that things are not going as well as the government want people to believe. It is hard. And you remember the words of it brings you to Black Stallion. Sufferers don't care who from country or who from town. Sufferers just want to know where the next food coming from. And this is all part of the desperation that we are seeing in this country today.
So, quick question, yes or no, right? Since that you brought it up, Comrade Grainger, and those at home who are watching and joined with us, this is a simple yes or no question, and you can add your answers to the chat. Are we better off now than we were 7 years ago? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Quick no.
Quick no. Quick no.
Very few persons, if any, certainly not a majority, not 50.1% of Barbadians can say that they are better off now than they were 7 years ago. 50.1% of Barbadians can't say that. And whether it's cost of living as an issue, whether it's crime and security as an issue, whether it is healthcare, access to proper healthcare in the public service as an issue, a majority of Barbadians will not say yes. That's a quick no. On the point of cost of living, I'll share an interesting situation that I encountered recently in the office, and it's something that I've seen over and over. And I've realized that for some time we speak of another matter in Barbados, that is of our declining birth rate and birth rates over the years. I tell persons recently, and it sounds jovial, but it is not. It is serious. The most effective contraceptive device in Barbados right now is the cost of living.
Whoa.
I kid you not.
Whoa.
So many persons, see, it isn't that persons aren't out there, they're doing things. They are. And it isn't that persons aren't becoming pregnant. They are. But you have increasing use of emergency contraceptive methods. And you have persons who will tell you upfront in discussions with office, and this comes up in the office for various reasons. They will tell you, I can't afford another child. I can't afford another child. No. I mean, I wouldn't mind having another child, but persons literally are telling you they cannot afford another child because the basic standard that they would want to provide for another child, financially, they are not able to do that. Right, so it is literally the most effective concept in Barbados right now. The cost of living, and that is something somewhat it's a cost of living impacting on person's decision to have children is real. It is real. There are persons more and more are deciding they may be desirous, but they are not doing it because they can't afford it. It is a real issue in Barbados. It is just too expensive to live here. I mean, Barbados to some extent has always been one of the more expensive jurisdictions in the English-speaking Caribbean, but we have separated ourselves from the rest, and we are clearly now at the top in various metrics. The thing is, you hear from central bank governor, you hear from central government, you hear about bounty in the economy, yet person's reality is extremely different. This huge disconnect between the macroeconomic indicators that they look at and persons' daily felt realities. The gulf is extremely wide.
Anything to add, Andrew?
Yes, well, this government had what they called in their early stages of government a 12-point plan to reduce cost of living. I am asking the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, what has become of your 12-point plan to reduce the cost of living for the people of Barbados? We hear nothing about it. Under the last administration, which was heavily criticized by this government, who operated under trying times, under trying times. But you know what it did? We implemented free bus fare to school children.
True that.
A cost-cutting measure for parents. So because the then Prime Minister saw the need, listen, we need to protect our children from the subculture of the minibuses and to get our children to and from school in a safe manner. And while all of this was happening under trying times, our social services were still going. Persons can still go to the hospital and the polyclinic and get treatment without dying in accident and emergency, right? And through all of this, under the trying situations, as I say, Barbadians were living better. Barbadians were living better, but they were fed a public relations diet, and they bought into it and handed this government the authority to govern. And what have we gotten in return?
A lot of fancy talk.
A lot of fancy talk, but the prices are still choking us.
Yes.
A lot of
government
promises
recently spoke about under this non-communicable disease and what's not, and proceed to tax what they term as unhealthy foods. But my position is, if you want people to eat healthy, you make the price of healthy foods affordable to them. So you don't tax the unhealthy foods. So what in sense you're doing? You can't eat the unhealthy foods because the price is too high, and I can't buy the healthy foods because the price is too high. So what are people to do? They can't starve.
But a pack of corn kernels, even with an additional tax, will still be cheaper than a pack of plantain chips. So that, yes, the price of the healthy, you would want the price of the healthier stuff to be reduced. But cost of living in Barbados is high. We've trapped ourselves, in that box. As one local economist put it, Barbados right now is a cesspool of unrepayable debt. And because we're not getting the kind of receipts that we would want from our main industry, our main earner, you tax. You squeeze the people to meet your obligations.
That was something that we had actually discussed in the previous program, where that we had kind of like likened to the revenue, the GDP. Their revenue cannot be as, how you say, as profitable if you're borrowing all the time, because then you would use your own money to fund your social programs. So then segueing into what I like to call, because we growing up, all of us have been impacted by the church, probably went to Sunday school, probably did religious studies, and we know of the 10 commandments. What I like to say is that Barbados has social commandments, and probably the main one, the number one, is that Barbadians are our resource. Barbados's people are our resource. Are we seeing that investment in our people so that they can be economically prosperous? Because I see a lot of money being borrowed, but I'm not seeing it going to the people. I'm not seeing implementation of programs where, like what Ensley said, there was a slashing of bus fares for school children. Where is the investment in our people, if any? Where is it?
They would have to show us. Yes, borrowing in the name of Barbadians is extremely high. From my vantage point, we do not get proper accounting of monies borrowed. We get a lot of talk. We get various projects started, few to none completed properly or on budget. When there are issues highlighted, the well-publicized matter of Hope, which the opposition leader, as chair of the Public Accounts Committee, was looking to investigate. Government used its majority on said committee to block that, so we don't get proper accounting for the funds spent. We have for the year so far. I just did a quick check this evening. I discovered 4. Time didn't permit me to check further, but at least 1,444 million or 1.44 billion Barbados dollars was borrowed in the name of Barbadians for this year so far. May very well be more than that, but that is over 1,400, almost 1,500 million Barbados dollars has been borrowed just this year.
Just this year.
Just this year alone has been borrowed in the name of Barbadians. What do we have to show for it? What do we have to show for it? And all I think about is my children and my unborn grandchildren that have to repay this debt. Very few of us were born with enough money that you could talk about living debt free, and even millionaires have debt. So the debt itself is not the issue, but it's what you are doing to manage that debt, and are you taking up debt that you can't manage? We are basically trying to keep up appearances, live above our means. We're maintaining high foreign reserves. Not a problem if those foreign reserves were maintained with earned foreign exchange,
and not borrowed
those
money.
Foreign reserves are being maintained with borrowed money, and the people of Barbados are being choked to death to maintain those foreign reserves, because, as I said, tourism clearly is not earning the receipts that we would hope that it is earning. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to be borrowing so much. 1,000 million on the international bond market at 8%. Then recently, money from the Saudi Development Fund. Earlier this year, money from CAF. Like for this government, let's just go get another 187 million, another 108 million, another 50-something million. It's what's the big deal? The people will pay the taxes. No, you're a minister earning 20-odd thousand a month, so you don't feel it that much. But the majority of Barbadians are clearly earning under 10,000, in fact, under 6,000 a month. So they cannot handle the level of taxation. It impacts us in a significant way. And now we have to, going back to something we were talking about earlier, we have to spend more money on safety and security measures. You have to find money for a camera system, a home security system. We are not making 20,000 a month or 15,000 or 12,000 a month. So it is a very significant, albatross around the necks of Barbadians. The cost of living driven, largely by the level of taxation, which, appears as if it will go unabated because, as I just said, the government just keeps borrowing. And what do you have to show for the borrowing? What investment in the development of our young people, middle age, etc. What is there to show for it?
So, Ainsley, at you. Where's the investment in the Barbadian people? There seems to be a lack of it. Where is the investment?
That is hard. It is hard to decipher. What I think has to happen, we have to lift our people up. With the amount of money that is being borrowed and that has been borrowed, I think that we need to see a lot more. The money that is being borrowed somehow, to me, in my view, is not going to the people who need it most. I think the money is trapped. It's in a bottleneck. There's no accountability for the money. When money is borrowed, we hear, okay, this is for, let's say, this climate resiliency or what have you. But there's no checks and balance. We don't hear, well, okay, we did this, and out of that money, $10 was spent on this, $20 on that. And then next thing, sometimes you come and you find that you borrow again for the same thing that you have borrowed for previously.
Yes, yes.
When this government came into office, the fuel tax was supposed to go towards road works. But then they had a loan from China for road works as well.
Yeah.
Right? So something is definitely wrong where this government is concerned. There's no accountability. There's no transparency as they promised when they came into office, and everything seems to have gone through the window. This government promised to reduce taxes. They add to it.
True that.
They promised to reduce cost of living through the roof.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Yeah, that point of instituting taxes for one purpose, raking in millions. I mean, that fuel tax, as I call it, has been a cash cow for government. But we still needed multiple loans to do mill and pave.
True.
Even though they have raked in hundreds of millions from said tax. You know, we are paying a solid waste tax, sewage tax. Yet still we hear of need for loan to deal with South Coast Sewage Project and West Coast Sewage. You're collecting money for one purpose. Clearly you're using it for another purpose, because when you actually come around to trying to fulfill that purpose, to deal with that matter, you know, talk of going to get another loan. But we have already paid you for that. You already took money from us to deal with those matters. And you know, you're taking money from us again by way of taxation to repay the loans that you borrowed for something that we already gave you money for. Quite frankly, it is criminal.
Understood. Right now, we are joined by Senator Ryan Walters, candidate for St. Michael Northeast. Sir, I'm going to Northwest. I am going to throw you into the deep end right now. We were just talking about where is the investment in the Barbadian people. We talk about the 10 commandments from the religious side, but we all know that Barbadians have their own social commandment, which is the people are the resource of the country. But we see to have a lack of investment in the Barbadian people. Why is there this lack of investment in the Barbadian people?
Good evening, everybody, all the viewers, fellow comrades. Very informative session to listen on my way down. The panel is doing an excellent job to make on the issues.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
As relates to investment in people, what you're seeing is a government that's confused. It's confused because it's torn between whether it should focus on looking good on paper or focus on developing the country. Right? So they focus a lot on key metrics, key economic metrics, which they will boast about. That the GDP is one, level of reserves are the other. So they will use these key metrics to determine if the country is doing well. So one of the things that we have been questioning as a party is the money being used in the best interest of the citizens, which is the question you're asking here. We have, I think, at the last record, about 7 months of reserves. 7 months of money that has been borrowed by this government that taxpayers have to pay interest on and then repay. So the money is not being used. The money is being trapped. on the balance sheet for the purposes of some bragging rights. Now, their defense is that we need to be resilient. That's the word they use to put fear in people's mind that they're doing something good. We need to be resilient, but we ask the question, I asked in the last press conference, how much resilience do we need? Because we move from 12 weeks of cover to 7 months. And that's borrowed money that has an expense that taxpayers have to pay. And then the money's trapped. We do not get improvement in schools, infrastructure. We don't get improvement in the plants that the police officers have to work. We do not have improvement in salaries in the civil service in the way that is impactful. The QEH is in the same form that the government came and found it, other than the facelift to the emergency department. Polyclinics are in the same shape as well in terms of how they look, and how they feel, and how they operate. We are still grossly understaffed at both the polyclinic and the QEH. Teachers cannot even get the vacation, the leave pay that they want, terms leave that they want, because it is a financial concern. But yet the government is parading that they're doing well. They have 7 months of reserves. There has to be a cap and a strict policy on what the government thinks is adequate resilience for the country. Coupled with that, they have boasted as well of having natural disaster clauses, which means that in the event of a natural disaster, we will not have to pay our principal loans, or there will be a pause on loan payments, which makes sense. That is a form of resilience. There is also the fact that they have debt space now, because the debt to GDP, let's say, is 105% or under, which gives them some space to borrow if we were in a case of a natural disaster again, or in a case of any crisis. So there are things that the government has put in place that clearly signals to us that the money now needs to start to work in the best interest of the taxpayers. And that money right now is trapped for bragging rights. Sometime next week, the governor of the central bank will come to the country, and this is what they will say. 7 months of reserves, debt to GDP around 100%. What else will they boast about? Unemployment, 6%. And they think that everything is fine. But unemployment is at 6%. Growth in the economy is at another one, growth in the economy. So therefore, the growth in the economy, unemployment at 6% or 7% or somewhere around there, debt to GDP around 100%, and foreign reserves 7 months. Or your men are unemployed. Our people in the country are underemployed. So we have an unemployment issue. The biggest unemployment issue that we have that is also affecting cost of living is that since this government took office, they have transitioned permanent employee into a part-time employee.
So there's no more security of tenure.
There's no security of tenure. There are young women. I met a young lady on Saturday who said she worked in a private entity that makes a lot of money. Actually, a commercial bank. I don't need the name of the bank. And she was on a month-to-month contract for a year, and now she has no employee. Could you imagine that this government is encouraging that behavior? Because remember, the private sector is following from their lead, which was to put the NCC workers on contract, to put the workers at the QH on contract, put the workers in the school on contract. Everybody's on contract to change principles, terms, etc. So what you have now is that no one is employed. You are working, but you are not employed. So you are literally going from job to job. That is how it is for young people. So we have a big unemployment issue. The foreign reserves, as I said, our interest payments are through the roof, which means that they have to tax more, as Dr. Wickham said earlier, to make those payments on an annual basis, which means that money is locked. Money is locked as well without being productive. It is not earning, and it is not invested also in the people in social services. So you've got two issues there. The debt to GDP at 100%. Well, the debt in 2018 was 15 billion. The debt to next week will be 15 billion. So we don't have we still have the debt issue. In terms of growth, They say we are growing, but we are growing because we are growing from COVID,
Correct.
right? And we are growing for the impact of the price increases and the inflation that we spoke about, which the government has not made enough intervention on. So they have premised their success on economic indicators while leaving out the people of the country.
Understood. I'm going to stick with you, Senator Walters, and we can segue more heavily into the tax issue. When I read the 2018 manifesto, they specifically said a country cannot tax itself into recovery, but we seem to see this over reliance on taxing the Barbadian people, especially in regards to like fuel. Why is it that Barbadians, why is it that Barbadians are paying more at the pump than any other country in the region? Why is that?
I can't answer why. I think the issue of the prices at the pump is not peculiar to what was happening pre-2018. From the perspective that there's the same duty applies, the same VAT applies, and the same method of calculation, the price at the pump applies. What has not applied is the principle to be fair to the consumers, which is as I, the oil company, or I, the government of Barbados, who's importing the oil, obtain it at a cheaper price, I do the calculation and I pass on those savings to the consumers. That is a major change in this government. They continued it quite well for the first year and a half. As soon as they needed to get money, you start to see the change in terms of holding the price. The price was held for 18 months at $4.22 per litre. Extremely high. The price is, for those 18 months, prices on the world market showed a continued decline, almost I think 20% over that time. But yet the price stayed. I calculated that costs consumers, gas users, producers of products that use gasoline, etc., and diesel, at least $60 million over that period of time. So that's money that's being extracted from the economy, right? As it relates to taxes now, what the government has done is that they have found a way to get money directly from you, not based on consumption really, but based on the fact that you have to utilize these services. You have to go to the gas station to fill up, so they give a gas tax. You have to pay your water bill, they give you sewage tax, they give the garbage tax. So they're collecting the money. It doesn't matter how much you consume in those areas, you get a direct portion and it's fixed. Now, to help combat the cost of living issue, one of the thought that they would have tried to put money back in the people's pockets, but they continue with the trickle-down economics. And you saw the little war between the BLP members, one who owns the supermarket, and one who's the prime minister of the country, where she has now agreed with us that prices did not come down when the NSRL was removed. Prices did not come down when the government wrote off hundreds of millions of dollars in VAT that we paid into these businesses, and they did not pay over. Prices did not come down substantially when there were price caps at the port. Prices did not come down substantially when duties were removed on specific items, because the trickle-down economics does not work. The same way you extract directly from persons through gas pump, through water bill, etc., you should find ways to put money in the pay packs, because then that gives me the discretion of being able to spend my money. For example, there could be a break in income tax. And people will say, well, where would the government recover the money? Inflation means the government is earning inflation dividend. As prices go up, naturally, more duty, more tax revenue, more VAT, more tax revenue. Naturally, without any effort, the government earns more because of inflation. So if those increases and those increasing revenue takings are offset by some reductions in income tax, which gives you some money directly that you can then go and pay for services, but you can support your family, then there's no significant impact to the government's purse or takings. So it is very possible, right? When you look at the renewable energy thrust, for example, a great opportunity for the government, if they got it right, to start to earn revenue without taxing. Because what it means, instead of you trying to get private investment to put solar panels all across Barbados, with their extensive plant inventory, the government could earn significant amount of money from the light power. But they have not gotten that. They actually messed it up now. That is at a standstill. And that is a real source. That is a real source for the people of Barbados that will help relieve us from income taxes, from VAT reductions that were promised, etc. Right? So taxation, they've used it because they needed money. They found ways to get it directly, but they've not found ways, or they refuse to find ways to give us some benefits directly. And we know now for sure, the Prime Minister agrees that it did not work, because she's quoted as saying, we did this, and the prices didn't come down. So this is something that the Democratic Party has been saying for years. But the government needs to now put systems in place that you get your direct benefit in your pay path. You need to fix it there, the issue, because at the end of the day, you can have people working month-to-month contract. These young people with degrees, month to month. You got a young man worked at the QEH, and they visited his home around January. He could not even go to get layaway from the retailers because he could not prove that he would be working outside the last 6 months. And right now, actually, he's unemployed. He's looking for work because he can't take it anymore. So these are real things that the government needs to focus on if they want to reach the average person, if they want to reach households. And again, you mentioned the middle class. Middle class is carrying too much of a heavy burden. It's actually overbearing now. Right? It's actually overbearing, and we need to find a way to release that burden. Right? One of the things that we had in our 2022 manifesto was the taxation on bonus, taxation on incentive above and beyond your regular pay. Those are things that could release some revenue into a middle-income household. Allowances, bring about allowances on your income tax return. You're paying mortgages, have your house insured. You're doing some of the right things. The PAYE is coming out of your salary every month religiously. You're consuming in a way that will bring. You're working in the informal sector. You purchase a lot from the informal sector, so you are really contributing to the economy. So I think we need to, as a party, we need to find ways to, and they're possible without offsetting the revenues of the government, to really get money again back in the middle income families.
But what did you say though, Ryan? That is that the debt trap that the government has found itself in, that has put the country in, which is driving them to maintain the level of taxation, because the economy doesn't appear to be earning from tourism the kind of receipts that you would need. So the level of taxation continues because we have to service these debts to keep up appearances. And that takes me back to a comment from decades ago that for a country to try to tax itself to stability, maybe even prosperity, is like a man trying to lift up a bucket while he's standing in it. It will never work. It will never work. So the debt trap that we're in, because we're perpetually borrowing and we are not earning to service these debts, so we have to keep taxing.
True, and I think that was one of the biggest errors that the current government did or made, which was they tried to solve our issues overnight. The issues that we have are not, we can't solve them overnight. We have to solve them over time.
Yes.
So to write off the national insurance debt was to bring down the debt to GDP, was to reduce interest payments, right? Was to make these things more palatable. But we're in the same debt position, right?
Foreign debt now.
We're in a worse position.
Because it's foreign debt as opposed to local
debt now. So now you have to get even more tourism receipts, right? So when you took a decision to try to fix everything in 6 months, that is really problem. I think we had one major issue which we had to deal with, which is the level of foreign reserves. we had to borrow money. I think we had to borrow money at that time to prop up the reserves to a reasonable level. We could have borrowed the money just for the reserves and continue to work to grow the economy, put things in place, bring back industries, focus on building up the economy, etc. But we had to borrow. But it's how much we had to borrow. We end up borrowing over $1 billion to do what? To sit there now for us to be paying back loans. And what has now happened is that every time that there has to be a repayment of a loan, the government borrows money,
Another loan.
to refinance it. So the loans are going nowhere. And the last situation, they borrowed money at even higher interest rate.
Yeah.
Which is putting more pressure on us now.
Yeah.
As consumers or taxpayers. So the debt trap is real. I think the government tried to do everything too fast. Popularity going to people's head. They're superior and all that, but the reality is there. Tourist levels are now back last year, 2024, are now back to the levels they were in 2017 and 2016 and 2018. After all that time. And they're not to the levels in the UK market. So the UK market is no longer our major market. So the tourism spend is also down. The length that people stay in Barbados is also down. Right? So we're in the worst position with the travel advisory that you guys mentioned earlier. And we have now to not only try to get new tourists, we have to make sure we get tourists from places that are going to stay long and spend money. We're talking about families and having the history of coming to Barbados and traditions and so forth. We have to build our back up now as a destination.
But we are among the most, and by some metrics, we are the most expensive destination. So how do we do that?
I want to share the answer.
Ensley, I'm going to lead with your closing thoughts on this taxation issue. Penny.
What I would say is that I remember under the last administration, the prime minister was always, this prime minister no, was always the one to saying you cannot tax your way out of recession. But she is now in the driver's seat. And what are you getting?
The same thing she said she wouldn't.
Taxes, after taxes, after taxes. And I hope that the people are taking note. People are watching. I know they are. And there are unintelligent people out there.
Not only taxation will drive increased taxes, consumer taxes, etc. But wastage and corruption will also drive the need to recoup money from taxpayers, from households. So you have whole budget, $60 million in houses are still unoccupied and structures are unbuilt. You have $20 million sent to Guyana to bring prefabricated wooden houses to the country that came when they were attempted to be assembled. They could not even find some of the parts. You have arrangements on the whole that will cost us significant money as taxpayers because the government chose, rather than build with blocks and cement, to build with precast concrete, which is substantially higher based on the Auditor General's report. See, we getting comments, but they're significantly higher. So they're spending much more than they have to, and without any justified reason. So you have significant wastage, $27 million in cost overruns with the importation of the steel frame homes. Overruns, 27 million in overruns alone. Not the 27 million they used that was the cost of the budgeted for the project. So you have $54 million. Some of the houses are not up. The city steel is somewhere about Barbados. But the point I'm making is that you're talking in just housing alone, 60, 54, 20, close to $150 million wasted. And that will drive taxation as well. and I haven't spoken about the things that are happening in the QEH or in the healthcare system, in the polyclinics.
Mhm.
We talked about, we heard in the newspaper, last week, a room was supposed to be retrofitted since last year,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it has not been retrofitted. The contractor is blaming the subcontractor. So you can see, we don't know how much money, but you can see where the money is going.
Mhm.
You hear about all of the money being spent in polyclinics across the country, but just to do snag work. You're in the system, doc. You're aware. Just to do snag work, millions.
Mhm.
I can't quote the figures because I don't have any. I'm only hearsay it, but this is what is really happening up there. So we have to clip out the corruption,
Mhm.
wastage, because that is also driving taxation.
I'm actually very glad that you segued for me into our next segment, which is actually corruption. So I want to, one of our subtopics in this area, I want to focus on the Integrity in Public Life bill, a bill that was promised 7 years ago, and apparently it has passed both houses. It's yet to be proclaimed. What is the apparent holdup? I'm actually gonna leave with you, listen.
I don't know what the holdup is. I think integrity of public life is very important.
Mhm.
For the reasons that I just explained.
Yeah.
Because we, as a country, we are already struggling to pay our bills and to meet our social services.
Mhm.
We have to have persons in place that are working in the best interests of the country and not themselves. And if that was the case, there's no reason why the legislation should not have been proclaimed. That's the best answer. If your intention is to do good and to be clean and to follow the books, do the right thing, and to remove corruption as much as you can, you should have had the legislation proclaimed.
Well, Brian, if the intention is to be clean, if the intention, but you ask yourself, why not pass the integrity legislation? It is something that this government touted. The last government was the most corrupt government ever descended upon Barbados.
Their words. Their words.
Their words.
Their words. According to them.
Their words.
Yeah. Their words.
And you were supposed to be the new plug from the burning.
Mhm.
Demonstrate it to the people. But no, you haven't. But yet still on a daily basis, you can point to situations that can only lead you to believe that there is some sign of
Thank you.
yeah going on, right? You look at hope.
Mhm.
There's not been any. We were promised an investigation into hope by the Prime Minister in her budget of March last year. This year, she shifted it to somebody else to do. No investigation into hope. Then our leader attempted to bring it under the Public Accounts Committee. Then they want to dictate to him what should be debated. Right? You look at a whole host of things going on within the economy that can cause a person to ask himself, is there corruption going on?
You see decisions being taken, being made that to those of us outside of the know don't make any sense. And we wondered, why are they doing this? Why is this being done? Why is that being done? But my suspicion is that those decisions make a lot of sense to the persons that they need to make sense to. I take our minds back to article May 15th, 2018, May 15th, 2018 in the Barbados Advocate. And it also appeared in other local paper at the time, where former Prime Minister he confirmed that in 2013 there was an offer being made. He was being encouraged by a senior member of the party to go to a Central American country, South American country, to get campaign financing for their party. In exchange for agreements, should they win government, we will do this and we will do that. And in that article, he confirmed that his position was absolutely not. We won't do that because he will not do that because he will not sell Barbados' foreign policy for campaign contribution. Clearly, there were persons who were comfortable doing that. My suspicion is that they're still comfortable doing that, where we see decisions being made that to us make no sense, but to them, they know why they are doing, why they have taken decisions that they have taken. Because there were significant amounts of monies being spent in the 2018 general election, certainly the 2022, that my suspicion didn't come from local sources. And then we see decisions that to us Barbadians, we're like, why is the government doing this? Doesn't make any sense. There clearly is need for, integrity in public life legislation to be proclaimed. If your intentions are clean, what is the issue? What is the issue? On that point, campaign financing for parties certainly need to be looked at, because you have parties spending comfortably north of 15 million, in the general election, and then you see decisions being made that make no sense to us, but they make a lot of sense to who they need to make sense to. So yeah, there is need for greater accountability, and the people of Barbados, because we are the ones bearing the burden, the dwindled middle class, lower class are the ones bearing the burden of taxation that is then used to pay the bills as a result of the wastage and the corruption in the system. The middle, they're the ones being squeezed. Don't qualify for any help really from government for anything because you're just barely over. But on that, income, you can't survive. Well, there are those living quite comfortably, making large sums of money. Government has an army of consultants. I don't know if you are aware of how many, making a lot. I'm not sure what they're doing. What are the positive benefits for the country of their consulting? That to me is another form of corruption and wastage as well. What is the yield to the Barbadian population for all that money that we're spending? Or are you just paying our friends favors?
You see, again, just continuing from Dr. Wickham, when you look at some of the things that has happened, you take the whole town civic center. That came up in the House of Assembly. You were hearing, it's the insurance company that is doing this. Then at the end of the day, it is private persons who may have been the owners of it. But when that is going on, or while that, you call it sale or transaction, or better word, was the public of Barbados kept fully abreast? Did government account to the people? Or did government come to the people and say, this is what we are doing, these are the terms on which this property is going to be transferred? There was that matter was closed in secrecy.
It was.
And then when the hue and cry came, door shut already, horse down board. Then we have the Gemma's Lane issue. Again, that causes people to ask the question, is there corruption in these things? Because there, again, no accountability. Government not coming to the people up front and saying, these are the parameters, this is what is on the table. We are getting this for that. We're hearing, they can get it because it is like like CDB and this type of thing. It's not true.
Mhm.
But that 5 hectares of land has gone. While the people of Barbados' eyes are open, they have not seen what transpired.
You reading my mind, Comrade Granger, because that was where it was going next. The property down Gemmett's Lane.
Mm.
There was no communication. If we're going to speak about integrity and transparency, communication is the foundation of that. The people were not informed, they were not approached, they weren't told anything about this transaction. But yet there seems to be this behavior or this pattern where this government tends to do things under the cover of night. And then when the sun shines on it, and you say, well, how did this happen? And we didn't know that this was happening. They tend to backpedal and they then say, oh, this is the standard, this is what people do. You know, why is it that this government appears to have a problem with communicating with the Barbadian people?
You actually use the right term in the night, because I remember they passed that legislation after 7 o'clock. The leader of the opposition had to tap back into Parliament to have his say. So transparency is a big issue. And while we appreciate that everything cannot be communicated timely, etc., there are major things that need to be communicated to the public. There's still we still don't know what is going to happen to the geriatric hospital when it moves that property there. We hear about a conference center, but we don't know which terms. Why do we need another conference center? What's going to happen in that area? We don't know what's happening at Oystens. Rumors are out already that the land is sold, and that the civic center will be relocated, moved across, and we don't know what's the arrangement, how much the land was sold for, if it was given away, if it is a swap. We have no idea. So there are so much different things, and that is what has us now has to question if these things are if they're above board, if there's something hidden in the transactions that they don't want the public to be aware of, right? So it's a big issue. They communicate, but what do they communicate on? What do they communicate on? Nothing that is important to the people. We have cameras going up all across this country. I'm not sure if you all recognize, but cameras are going up all across this country, and that has not been communicated.
I counted 10 cameras in a 1 mile stretch on my way here this evening into the Michael East.
Exactly.
10 cameras.
We don't know who is the contractor that is putting up the cameras, what's costing for the cameras, what is the purpose of the cameras, although we should figure what the purpose is and how it's going to be managed, what is the ongoing cost. But there's no communication on it, right? So we are left to assume that is some secret service operation that's happening in this country every time the government has a major program. What the government is good at is anything, what they like, what you would see from this government is that they like to do things that involve construction. I don't know why, but you all figure it out. But everything is about constructing something. It's about building something. There are a myriad of projects going on. It's about, and it has to be a reason why Barbadians are not told in detail what is really happening and how much these things really cost.
There's this sense that the government operates on the premise that we will tell the people of Barbados what we think they need to know. Not necessarily what Barbadians would say they need to know, or quite frankly, what we should know, because we are the ones footing the bill. Government is not footing the bill. Barbadians are the ones footing the bill, right? Of which, yes, the members of government are a part of that. But so we do have a right to know more. In Barbadians, we need to continue to demand more transparency from our government. Not the sense that we have told the people of Barbados what they need to know. I remember one of those was it debt for nature swap or climate swap? That was this was debated late November, perhaps November last year, where a government senator repeatedly said, we have told Barbados what they need to know. But yet the terms made reference to penalties that will kick in if payments or if certain conditions aren't met. But those conditions were not outlined. So we will be penalized if conditions unknown to us aren't met. But government secretary kept saying we have told Barbadians what they need to know. But what were those conditions that were agreed to that were not included in the documents laid in the House, in the Senate? So it reeks of disrespect. This sense that we don't need to know. We just foot the bill.
The disregard of the
You know, Dr. Wicker, you spoke about the government is telling the people what they think they need to know. And there was this saying that I heard some time ago is that what the public may be interested in is not necessarily the public's interest. So that could tie in with what you had to say there. But on the same level of thing, we're here talking about Harrison Point maybe going or is going or has gone to some other
borrowed money
129
Borrowed
million.
money.
to refurbish that.
to
Yeah,
make up there into something
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
has longevity.
yeah.
I know you're gonna give it to Chinese or foreign people to live in.
Well, can
And
we
store,
continue the language?
store equipment.
Yeah.
Put tractors and bobcats and all those things up in there and labor.
Yeah.
That's gonna come around here and work for less than the law says. But our young men stay at home.
Yeah.
Because they're not afforded the opportunity to get up there and work for the decent wage. So those are the things. These are the things, the issues that we're having. Because again, the government is not focused primarily on the population. It is focused on just a few things which involve a few people.
And you're asking the question, why crime is it is? That's clear.
It's clear. So I'm going to segue now into our final topic, which is culture. Now, this one for me is kind of broad based, but I wanted to link it back to crime. But whichever this discussion goes, we can take it anywhere. So I was reading the paper, right? And I think I saw a picture of some young men who might have committed a murder, homicide. They're being led from the courtroom. And if you saw the smiles on their faces, they were beaming. They were beaming. And my question is why does it seem like gang culture, crime culture, why does it seem more attractive than just doing an honest day's work? Is this like a byproduct of where we've canceled or given up on our youth? Well, not we, but this current administration, where they seem to have taken the focus from the youth, and now those individuals who will lead them down to a path of crime have taken over and they filled that gap. Are we seeing a culture where crime life is more attractive than just earning an honest day's pay?
It appears that way, sadly. I think those who are involved are misguided and they're seeking guidance from the wrong source or sources. I think that what have kept us in the past is no longer keeping us today. And I go back to things like church, Sunday school, which were our moorings, so to speak, that held us together. That is not as prevalent today as it was back then. And I think over time it has gotten progressively worse. Where now you hear that parents would ask children if they want to go before it was not a choice, right? It was like having a bath, you know. There's no choice, there's no question about it, right? And that has gone. And therefore, you find that more and more persons then not being equipped with that grounding, more or less find themselves going astray and are seeking safe haven in that subculture, or yes, that subculture of crime and drugs. And they're made to feel that, well, this is what this is cool, right? Why go on and work for a man from 8 to 4 in the hot sun for $80 a day? I can get on a motorcycle and push this here and get this amount, or I can go and pull an ATM out of a ATM machine out of a thing and get some change. So I'm saying, sadly, that is the way that some young people seeming to be going. But I would like to think that they are in the minority. I would like to think so.
Elvis?
Yeah. In the minority, but the real danger and possibility that they become an increasing number. I am a firm believer in moral grounding for children, giving them what I would call a moral compass or yardstick, whether that be from church A, church B, church C. You know, I'm a firm believer in that. Why I say it is because, as persons get older, they will make their decisions. Many persons will, for various reasons, move away from that grounding, but it's there. It's in their subconscious, and it would influence decisions that they make. I mean, back in the day, I don't think that the temptation to do evil is anything new. Right? What seems new is the ease with which persons commit acts of violence and commit crime and can't be bothered. And as you said, smiling, going across the courtyard and shouting to family members and friends that I'll be back soon and things like that. That's relatively new. But man has always had a tendency to do things that he probably shouldn't. But back in the early 80s, if you thought of doing something, there was another thought back there that said, I can't do this, or I shouldn't do this because my mother gonna roast my tail. I don't want to get in trouble with the police. Something. Nah, it's not worth it. Let me go home. No, we have, because many of our younger persons, under 40, under 45, don't have that grounding anymore. As a thought enters a person's mind, they're more likely to act on it. So that encouragement really is to parents, guardians, those responsible for younger persons, and it is always easier to instill these values when children are much younger. We grow up understanding that you can't bend an old tree. It's a lot harder. But the encouragement is for persons to take the time, put in the effort, raising children with these values instilled in them, so that when they're with friends, whether at school or outside of school gate or after school, when that age comes, and somebody says, well, let me do this, let me do that, at least there's something on the inside of them that could help to point them in the other direction. Obviously, yes, they will still have their decisions to make, but what we have now are many young persons who do not have that voice in there saying, think twice about this. That voice that reminds them actions have consequences. I don't want to deal with the consequences if I should do such and such. So you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna pass this time around.
Right.
This is always a sensitive area. Because you talk recent times, you talk about parenting, talk about social upbringing and the role of the church, etc. But there's the smaller things, the things that we think are insignificant. For example, I mentioned that whole issue of labor. And when a young man or a young woman leaves school or university and goes for work, cannot find decent work at fair pay that makes sense for them. What are they to do?
It's tenure.
Right? What are they to do? What are the young ladies to do? We talk with the young men that we see, but what are the young ladies to do? Prostitute? These are real questions. And we have more young women coming out of university than we have young men. But as it relates to the young men, there are community is strong. Community you grow up can determine a lot on where you end up. So we have to fix at the community level a lot of these issues. We have to put more sports into the communities because our young men need to be productive. We have to make sure that they have access to skills training, opportunities to do things that are productive. We have an example in Deacon's Farm, where since 2018, the community center has been closed. Young men have to go to St. John at Christ Church to learn a trade or skill. That is the reality. So if these are the little things in our communities are happening, so well, there are one or two bad apples. As you rightly said, Doc, you got to be careful that it doesn't start to spread. Because you could walk through a lot of these communities now. And you can see the young men yesterday now playing dominoes. They might not be doing anything bad, but they're idle. But when you get out the car, you go to them, the first thing they tell you, I want some work. Yeah, I want some work. And then we need to start to reset the minds of our young people. I do not understand how in 2025, the goal of young people, you know what the goal of most young men, I can say here, the most young men I meet on the road, they want a job in water authority. That is it. They want a job at the water authority. To do what? I don't know, but I just want a job at the water authority and give me some tenure, and I want to get serious about my life. But there are other opportunities out there that young men can do. What we also need to make sure that we are teaching our young people is that there's a process for development. They see some of us made it to our professions, but they do not know the story or the path that we had to take to get there. So we have to be responsible enough also to walk them through these things when we're interacting with them. Listen, I started in a hotel just like everybody else. I was a sports coordinator and used to go around and I used to go in the hot sun. This rackets, go clubs and thing, I play sports with the young guests in the hotel. On Fridays, I used to catch the bypass bus back home to Black Rock. I used to walk the guests to Oystons, get in the bus, and then go home for minimum wage. But they stopped me from always seeking more. Work hard, seek more, improve yourself at work, education-wise, etc. But they sometimes believe that we just bam. Overnight, we are where we are today. So we have to walk through the process of living life. They got their experiences, you got the challenges, but they got the opportunities there, and it's for them to make the opportunities. We can't let the bad apples get to them in a way that they're not seeing that there will be life challenges. The families may struggle a little bit. There might be times where the bills can't pay, or when mommy's going to have a headache because she can't put all the food on the table. But you go fight through it, and there's a way to do it that does not involve illegal activity. And so I think so it's very sensitive for me because I grew up in the community like that. I canvass in the community like that, and people don't like to use the word ghetto, but we gotta make sure that we're not turning our communities into ghettos because they're really not ghettos. They're not.
But it's just a situation there when the struggle is real. The struggle is real for the man at the bottom. And only sad while canvassing in St. Michael East, and he come across a gentleman. He said, "This is my daughter. I'm a handy man. She has no pass for secondary school. Somebody sponsored me with the material for the uniforms, but I don't have the money to get them yet." But by the time I was finished speaking to him, he was able to at least have 2 uniforms to get his daughter moving into secondary school. And as you go through the constituency, when again, we have it's working class, mainly working class constituencies, and persons are really there. They just feel this sense of hopelessness. There's nowhere to turn, right? I want some work. You can help me with some work. You know, and this is not anything that is not known to this government. But I think again, government has the priorities towards its people have been skewed and not directed at lifting the people up. I think it I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to speak of what you see, right? But situation is real. It's real and hard for a majority of the people as you interact with them.
I want to go back to something that Ryan said in regards to, people see us now in our professions, but they don't understand the struggle. So speaking about role model and hero culture, like back in my time, you had people that you aspired to be. You wanted to be the next Michael Jordan, or you wanted to be Obadeli. You wanted to be a performing artist and actor. You wanted to be somebody. There was something there that you could aspire to. But for me, my journey was not an easy one, right? I came out of school without anything, but I believed for me that education would be my savior. I want to know if, like, can we capture the minds of our youth again and tell them that, yes, listen, maybe your situation isn't the best right now, but that doesn't mean that you have to give up on your dream. You can still focus on that. We can put a program in place that help you, and even though it might take longer than most, you will get there. It took me. I started studying from 21, and I only just got called to the bar in 2021. That was I was 21 in 2002, 2001. That's 19 years. I studied for 19 years to get where I am here today. 2-year break in between those 19 years. And I want the youth to understand that, yes, the right path is always the hardest path, right? The shortest path will get you money quickly, but it leads you down to the road of destruction. Can we communicate to our youth that, yes, you don't need to give up on your dreams? If you have a dream to be a sportsman, an artisan, a performing artist, don't give up on it, even though that the path might be hard, but the path is still there. You just need to go down it. And maybe, just maybe, somebody will help you along the way.
Yeah, we do have to encourage them not to give up on their dreams. In fact, from my vantage point, the lack of dreaming among our young people is a big thing. They're not dreaming like perhaps 30 years ago, 25 years ago. Understanding that, yes, it won't necessarily be straightforward. For the part of my story that is known as well, it was definitely not easy.
It was not easy.
The days that you don't know what you're going to eat, and I'm talking even when you're overseas studying, the days that you didn't know what you were going to eat, the pit toilet, the cooking in the yard, the food up there tastes nice, in the yard. But it is so, yes, hard work is required, and that is a given, but encouraging them that they can do it. There are many examples of persons who have endured very difficult, dire circumstances and have managed to break through to become what they wanted to be. Government, even as an opposition, and all Barbadians who have passed through dire circumstances. I think we need to continue to look for ways to engage, to encourage, to get them dreaming again, and providing opportunities. The trickle-down approach clearly does not work. And in fact, you will probably have a challenge finding a country or jurisdiction anywhere in the world where trickle-down economics really works. The idea that you take care of the top and the people at the bottom will benefit. You know, you'll get some crumbs here and there, but that doesn't usually work. We're people are the focus. Not that they will benefit by the way, but where our young people are the focus, getting them dreaming again and providing opportunities in disciplined environments like the Defense Force Sports Program, etc., for them to be able to pursue their dreams and to become persons that they want to be productive, earning members of society. And Ryan's point is valid because I hear that as well. I just want a job. You know, I just want to be able to earn a living and to be able to do things. That is the cry from so many persons out there.
Okay, go ahead.
In the communities, right? There are persons that we can, I'm sure that, but I can identify, I'm sure that Grainger can identify other candidates who knows the residents so well. I got guys that I can call on if I want to find out who is skilled in any area, whether sports or any other thing. They got guys that put together football, they got guys that put together basketball, they got guys that put together, if you got the work that needs to be done in the community. We need to lean more on the positive community influencers, right? We need to go for the positive community influencers. The guys that are doing positive work, working with the young men on a Saturday mornings, Wednesday nights, those positive people in the community and support those programs. I think that's where we're falling down because these guys have the respect of the men, the young men who are in their charge. I'm telling you, if you just go to some of the either practice sessions or the little groupings that they have, they can get the guys to do what they want. And the same way they can get the guys to do good things, they got elements also that can get the guys to do bad things. So we got to support those good things in the community. We have to make sure that the options are there. And that's where the community empowerment comes in. We're not seeing a lot of that. Right? We're not seeing, you got to talk about Northwest because we have a hard court. And basketball, we started because a community person, we started basketball a few years ago. If it's one of the things that I do when I have my picnic, I recognize at least 3 persons a year that have done well in community efforts. Whether it's a church, whether it is a social group, whether it's an individual. Because we need to highlight success more. We need to highlight things that are good. And I think sometimes you have a young student in the community, and he might be very good academically, but he might stand out, but he might feel he doesn't belong. Or she might feel they don't belong because you know what? I stand out so good. But it's something to be proud of. You should be proud of your achievement. The same way how a top footballer from the area is proud of his achievement to make the national team. You know, so we have to really get into the people. We have to use positive community practitioners to really get the results that we want, the positive results. But as I said, for every positive, there's some negative out there who has just as much influence and that can turn these youngsters into doing bad things.
Agreed. What I would say is that I would like to impress upon the young people that education is the vehicle, that vehicle that will move you from poverty to satisfaction. If you remain focused with a clear vision and thought for what you want in your life. It may be hard at first, but the battle may be tough, but the victory is always sweeter.
It is.
Right? And you spoke about the community center in your area closed. And while going through the constituency, Michael East, people complain that the pavilion on Blenheim B, which was Benfica's area, has been closed. Nowhere for those young people who might have some good ideas to go in and sit down and discuss. And back in the day, you St. Michael East was a real sporting community. You had Benfica with 4 football teams. You know, you had Ivy Rovers. Ivy Rovers netball, and St. Barnabas was the Glory Girls in Barbados netball back in the day. These are now all
delete that comment.
barely
Dried up.
yes, dried up. But have no fear. Have no fear. These things will come again. These things will come again. So I that is my thing as it relates. And I just saw that there was a message on the board that saw about 60% of the students leaving school without certification.
Mhm.
I mean, what are we doing to capture those before somebody else gets them?
Well, we ain't capturing them with the Barbados Defense for Sports program anymore. That's for sure.
Before Dr. gets in there,
Mhm.
the government has abandoned our young people as basic education. Because if that statistic is correct,
Yeah.
they've left you on your own. Instead of bringing you back into the system, well, first of all, try to correct it so you leave with the CXCs. But acknowledging that you got, of course, systems to bring you back in. What have they done? They have the National Training Initiative, where you got to go online and do a couple courses. And they have spent significant amount of money on that program. And I can tell you where the money has gone. Into individual people to promote the program. And right now you see all the billboards all across the island. But when you go online to take a 2-hour course, I mean, it might sound bad, but it helping you. You have to make sure that these young men and women have the basics and have certification that can take them to the next level. If you come out of school without certification, you cannot get into BCC. In these times, you can hardly get into Polytechnic too. Where you gonna go? You can't advance yourself. So you have to bring them, you have to got systems to bring them back in formal education until you can let them back out to go on their own. But you cannot, these young people are on their own now, 16 years old, done school, no certifications. Some of them can't read or write, so they can't hold on a job. It's unfair to them because the state now has left them out. They have left them out, and that is not right. You cannot always say that because a person did not get 90% in maths or English at 11, that they are not going to be academic. That's a joke.
That's a joke.
It is a joke. Right? So you can't give up on them and say, go and learn to plumbing because you don't get 90 in maths or 80 in English. So you make sure you identify what the children must be taught and make sure they're taught well. That is what we need to do.
And I know this is not a discussion on education per se, but to segue somewhat from your point, Ryan, there are things that can be improved even with the existing system that we have in education. The present government has spent a boatload of money on reimagining education and education reform and junior college of excellent talk and senior college of excellent talk, a lot of fancy stuff, and we're basically back at square one. That is to say, children leaving primary school having spent somewhere between 5,500 to 6,500 hours in a primary school system, children leaving primary school unable to do the basics, and then being thrust into secondary school where they're asked to handle 12 subjects. You can't handle maths and English basic, and you're being asked to handle 12 subjects. I am of the belief that even with the existing framework, without all the fancy talk, that these children can be better addressed and helped with. I am of that firm view to ensure that at the point they do leave secondary school, at least certain fundamentals are there and skills are taught, that they are pointed in a direction along the lines of, things that they're good at, things that they're interested in. Even with the existing framework that we have, I believe that is possible. But we have been pigeonholed by you have to do it this way, you have to do it that particular way. And if you have a child, and there are many now who don't fit into that particular mold, who doesn't fit, then they're cast by the wayside. And the point is valid. If the figure is true that 6% are leaving without some measure of certification, and then they're competing now on the local job market with foreign labor, which is coming in unabated, then what are they to do? So you know, in that sense, the government has failed them because it hasn't positioned them to succeed. But I mean, the thing is, in our system, children have to be at school until age 16. So they're there. But what we're doing with the hours that we have them under our care, you know, it is unfortunate that you have a child at school for hours per day, per week, per month, per year, and we haven't ensured that they leave with certain fundamental skills and in a position to earn a living, to do something with themselves, to you know, to seek the income that they so desperately need. Because then at age 16, 17, out of school, I need money. Everybody needs money. But in what position am I to be able to get that money legitimately? But yet we have them in the school system for so many hours, year after year after year, from 4+ up to 16. There's more that can be done now, even while we work on how reform is to take place. There's more that can be done now.
I saw ad recently, which invited persons to come to the student revolving loan fund for additional loans for certifications and certificates and, you know, further education. The government is saying to us that they see us as cash cows. The prime minister, she want money. We need to improve the system and have opportunities for there are young people that would love to go to, because now they're a little older and they have a certain level of consciousness. They would like them to go back into school. They should not have to pay, at least not pay market rate. They should be able, that can be subsidized in some form. You know what I mean? There's just small little things that the government can put in place to really assist our young people. Because like I said, people develop at a certain age, right? I do not like to study. I will not study ever again in life. I hope not. But that's not my thing.
Yeah.
Right? But at the end of the day, you have persons that might not have been getting the 80s and 90s at 11, but they're university getting A's of first class honors because they developed. Then they got people that could do it, but they just, you know, they're just worthless for the time being. But then when they come into their consciousness, then they want the opportunity. So we have to find ways, not because we can't look at it and wasted the school life and on their own. We have to find ways to work with them, to capture them. It can't be that difficult. And it will not cost more than $27 million a year. So they got to, instead of wasting money, instead of paying consultants $120,000 a month,
invest in your people.
Invest in your people.
Speak the priorities.
The priorities, the people. So then all this thing about retooling our people and looking to see we have a deficit now, a skills deficit. But the government never tells you what are the skills that we need. You ever hear that part of the story? They always say the skills deficit. What skills? They have not told us what skills they need, what age group that we need these skills in, and what they're doing to fix it. But for the last 7 years, we have a skills deficit. We have a skills deficit in the parliament, in the cabinet. That's where the skills deficit is.
Right. So we're coming to the end of our show. Gentlemen, last week we asked, what do you foresee for the future? Maybe a broad question, but I'll leave it up to you to take it in whichever direction you want to take it. So I'm going to start here with Doctor. What do you foresee for the future?
Actions do indeed have consequences, whether on an individual level or government level. So I believe if we take appropriate actions, prioritizing people, as opposed to prioritizing the top and hoping for a trickle-down effect to benefit the people, that if we prioritize the people as first priority, that you know things can be turned around. It doesn't have to continue on a dire straight. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I foresee a future where once we get our priorities straight, that Barbados can once again be a preferred place to be. Yes, overall, you see the trajectory the world is on, but Barbados can be a preferred place to be. Once we have a leader that prioritizes Barbados first. I mean, after all, you're the leader of Barbados. You're not the leader of the world. You're the leader of Barbados. And I do believe Barbadians should be deciding what happens in Barbados. as opposed to outside interest. And once we get that right, that we can see better days. I'm optimistic.
I would say we have to lift our people up from out of poverty and frustration and into hope. Not with fancy speeches and long talk, but with initiatives that are people-centered and geared toward the upliftment of people. Whenever Barbados is in trouble, it is the Democratic Labour Party that has to pull the country out.
Yeah.
We are at the stage right now that we need this country needs the Democratic Labour Party again. And I'm saying that a Ralph Thorne-led Democratic Labour Party government will bring about these people-centered initiatives to lift the ordinary man up, not by giving a hand out, but a hand up.
Gotcha.
To bring them to that sense of hope, where they once again begin to feel that self-worth and importance in themselves and in their country.
I will go in a slightly different direction than my fellow panelists here. I foresee if the government continues on this path, it's going to be a lot of pain because they have not shown that they have really put people of the country first. People of the country first. And it is hard to correct, even for them, to correct some of the errors that they have made because they're too far gone. And I suspect that we have to buckle our belts and we have to brace for the worst. And I would implore Barbadians not to fall for the gimmicks, not to fall for the $200 or $300 that they may get in some consolation for their commitment to this government. They voted for the government, right? So the country did make a commitment, but their trust in this government. But I would ask the people of this country to look in at the Democratic Labour Party and to give us an ear and to allow us to speak to them and to allow us to share our philosophy, share our plans and goals that we have. To Grainger's point, all of which should be people-focused policies, because without people, there will be no economy.
So that was our program tonight. Remind everyone of the topic is the Foresee or Foresees, which is cost of living, crime, corruption, and culture. I want to thank our panelists for coming out tonight and continuing to show your commitment to getting the message across to the Barbadian people and the rest of the diaspora. So thank you for joining us tonight, and we wish you all a very good night. And I would like to say that it is darkest before dawn, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that light
oh yes, guns cans them. Hear the cries in the streets at night. So many dreams gone out like light. Youths them caught in a system cold, chasing shadows that take their soul. But the rhythm of hope is strong. Feel the beat it guide us along. Plant the seed of change in the ground and reap the fruits of love from this song. I'm sure we can rise from the shadows as we shine. Through the pain and the sorrows, leave the darkness behind. For the youths and the future, let the healing begin. In the rhythm of we island, let love pull us in. So come from the dust till dawn. As we rise up every morn, we'll fly through the skies like plane. All people will rise again. Hand in hand is how we'll start. Everyone can play their part. Man, woman and child come in. Let the cleansing begin. Come on, cleanse them. For the common man, times real hard. Crime and murder's driving we mad. And the youths them can't find no work, cause the system take them for joke. Let the positive fight control. We must not lose sight of our goal. In spite the stress and the strain, let us build our country again. I'm sure we can rise from the shadows as we shine. Through the pain and the sorrow, leave the darkness behind. For the youths and the future, let the healing begin. In the rhythm of the island, let love pull us in. So come from the dust till dawn. As we rise up every morn, we'll fly through the skies like plane. All people will rise again. Hand in hand is how we'll start. Everyone can play their part. Man, woman and child come in. Let the cleansing begin. Politicians drive the nice car, while the poor man bite the finger. Oil money blow away like dust. The people don't know who to trust. But every crisis we will master and rise to triumph from disaster. We will cast the evil away. We make the solemn pledge here today. I'm sure we can rise from the shadows as we shine. Through the pain and the sorrows, leave the darkness behind. The youths and the future, let the healing begin. In the rhythm of the island, let love pull us in. So come from the dust till dawn. As we rise up every morn, we'll fly through the skies like plane. All people will rise again. Hand in hand is how we'll start. Everyone can play their part. Man, woman and child come in. Let the cleansing begin. Clean the heart. From the ghetto I born and grow, I learned to make joy from sorrow. Though my story was hardship and pain, I see the blessings falling like rain. And every time the setbacks would come, I keep the faith and weather the storm. With every step and toil I strive, just to keep my dreams alive. I'm sure we can rise from the shadows as we shine. Through the pain and the sorrows, leave the darkness behind. For the youths and the future, let the healing begin. In the rhythm of the island, let love pull us in. So come from the dust till dawn. As we rise up every morn, we'll fly through the skies like plane. All people will rise again. Hand in hand is how we'll start. Everyone can play their part. Man, woman and child come in. Let the cleanse